Spoilers in this video. So, disaster level God, one of the most contentious subjects in this series. Everybody seems to have their own take on what this is exactly, and it's understandable because it's ambiguous, just like the rest of these disaster levels, and I'm pretty sure that's what one intended. Disaster level God, as most of us know, is a threat to humanity. That is what it's classified as. And a lot of people just want to take this for face value, take it quite literally. So it's like kind of like yes, but actually no, because disaster levels are more nuanced than the surface definition, as I always say, because it's an aggregate measurement of danger, taking into consideration the monster's damage capabilities, aggressiveness, difficulty of extermination, and other factors and whatever. But if we were just going off of the face value for disaster level God, there would be plenty of monsters who could pretty much be disaster level God, like Beefcake, a Black S, a couple of those individuals could take that, but they're not. They're dragons. I mean, not even one himself classified the beast of all beasts, Boros, as straight up disaster level God, and that also has so many different interpretations to it as well. You have the one camp saying that, well, one didn't want to classify Boros as God because he's saving that big drop for later on in the series, and I'm more inclined to agree with that. And then you have the other camps that's saying that, well, Boros is disaster level God because, the collapsing star roaring cannon could destroy the Earth, so therefore he's a threat to humanity, going back to taking disaster level God for its literal face value definition. And it's like, maybe we can combine all of these into one thing for God level, and it's like, just because you can, quote-unquote, destroy the Earth or something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are disaster level God. Yes, you are a threat to humanity for sure. There is no doubt about that. Just like I said, Beefcake was, and Black S could, because, him separating into 11 trillion different copies would easily be a threat to humanity, but yet they are still dragons. So we have to go back to the nuanced definition of it, as well as the response required for something like that. So it's like the threat levels keep increasing, okay, as the threat reveals more and more about itself. We've seen this throughout the series. I mean, let us not forget that Beefcake started off as a demon, okay, and then, one later on clarified in like an interview or something that, yeah, he would have became a dragon if Saitama didn't intervene. So I think that's something that we really have to take in consideration for God level here. So let's just say somebody shows up and they're like dragon level right off the bat. And then, the Hero Association keeps sending S-Class heroes after them, and the S-Class heroes are defeated. And let's say Tatsumaki goes after this dragon level threat. And then even Tatsumaki is defeated. So that's when I think we're going to start getting into the territory of them classifying something as disaster level God, because Tatsumaki, as they have stated in the series, is kind of like their secret weapon, barring Blast, because, we haven't gone enough into him into the series, and I've already talked about him enough. And this brings me back to those key factors that we talked about, such as monsters' damage capabilities and also difficulty of extermination. That is very important. So those things really contribute to somebody being disaster level God, in my opinion. But anyway, let's talk about like the individuals who are closest to this level. We got Boros. He is still in this category, as he always will be, because he is the first one to really start this argument, I suppose. And then recently, we got the introduction of Sairochi into the manga, and she is automatically on that list after that crazy feat that she had in chapter 132. That, without a doubt, is a God level feat, but it doesn't necessarily make her disaster level God. And I know this is getting convoluted. Hey guys, I'm right there with you, but I'm trying my best to make sense of all of this. And then we got Tatsumaki. We're finally seeing like what her full power is like, especially in the latest chapter 134, when she literally twists up Z City. That is pretty much like a God level feat, more or less, because we haven't really seen anyone else besides these three characters, more or less, come close to these feats in the series yet. Like even these, really strong dragons that we've established, the consensus high dragons don't have feats like this. Like, now before we determine who among these three is the closest to disaster level god, let's just establish who is without a doubt the closest, if not just straight out disaster level god, objectively, in my opinion, of course, and that is God himself. And I'm not even just, talking about speculation about where the series is headed. I'm saying based on what we saw in chapter 132, where it was more or less confirmed that he gave Sairochi the power-up that she currently has. He gave her the ability to shoot that crazy laser that pretty much busted that continent, or lifted up the continent, or close to a continent level size of the Earth. And yeah, I mean, if he can just give that ability to someone, then it is implied that he himself can probably do that no problem. And that's when we're going into monsters' damage capabilities. So if he could just casually bust continents, at least it seems like he could, maybe not. I'm going to say, yeah, for sure, he has got to beat disaster level god at this point. But aside from him, I suppose Boros is still the closest to god at this point, at least Meteoric Burst for sure. And that's because he seems to be the most well-rounded given these metrics and has the least amount of weaknesses. I mean, especially compared to Tatsumaki and Sairochi. Sairochi, given that she is a fusion of Orochi's god's power and herself, she also has that weakness of like her, physical body being on display, below the meat roots and all of that stuff. And also, given that Genos was able to deflect her blasts and Beam struggle with her, that kind of sets her back. Although, I'm not going to put too much weight on that. And then for Tatsumaki, she has a huge weakness, which is that she can only be on the defensive or the offensive. Like, she can't do both, as it's going to be revealed very soon in the manga, which we found out in the webcomic. And also, she has, her durability can only go so far. As we have seen. I mean, it's not weak by any means, but it is certainly not on the level of Boros. At least it doesn't seem like it is. So we'll go back to Boros. He is super fast, super strong. He can launch off energy blasts as well. And while they don't seem to be as powerful as what Sairochi has shown, I mean, they are pretty impressive, especially for their time. They weren't exactly wiping out continents. Now, could Meteoric Burst Boros do that? Maybe. He never really shot an energy blast out of himself, but he did do the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon. But the one setback to that was that was a release of all of his energy in order to do that. But even like going back to just one of the punches that he, landed on Saitama after lunging against him, that was almost like the equivalent of one of his released form blasts, which is crazy. And his speed seems to be unrivaled at this point. I mean, at least if you're comparing like his performance to Saitama against Saitama's performance against Flashy Flash. Also his durability, he's taken Saitama's punches the most impressive of anyone at this point. So imagine if like Meteoric Burst Boros went against Tatsumaki or Sairochi. I'm not saying it would be a complete squash match, but I would put my money on him to win at this point. I still believe Meteoric Burst Boros is at the top here, aside from God and the implications of his power. But let me know what you think about all this in the comments. If the video entertained you guys, please give it a like. Also have a Twitch channel, check that out. Also have a Patreon, check that out too. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.